In this week's Five Things newsletter, the stories are about Adidas designing with the Down syndrome community, a sensory friendly hijab built for comfort and faith, and more. But if you want to read those stories, you can get them at fivethingsdei.com because this podcast is now Good Vibes Leadership. Hey there, I'm Bernadette Smith. Whether you're in between meetings or on a quick commute, welcome to Good Vibes Leadership. This show focuses on playful, inclusive leadership through micro lessons you can actually use. My goal is to help you connect authentically with your team and clients and create a world where everyone actually wants to show up. Lead with joy, build for everyone. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to Good Vibes Leadership. I'm Bernadette Smith, CEO of the Equality Institute. I'm a keynote speaker and your weekly guide to playful, inclusive leadership. So this week I want to talk about something that just happened to me recently, and I'm still thinking about it. It's a really short interaction. I went to a gym. I was visiting. I had a friend who is a member at this gym and gave me access to the free membership for a week. And anyway, long story short, I had this 60-second interaction with someone in membership at this gym. It was a complete stranger, and it didn't go well. I was activated. The conversation felt personal, and it taught me something useful about how I'm wired. At the end of this conversation, I was activated. I left. I was angry. I didn't get angry in front of this person, but I definitely felt angry. But without escalating, without asking for a manager, without saying fully what I really wanted to say, I left. I chose flight, not fight, not fawn, not freeze, light. Now, those are the four primal stress responses, the ancient responses of how we respond to fear, how we respond to a tiger attacking us: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. You've probably heard of them, but have you thought about which one is your default response? My default response is flight. Almost always, it's flight. So here's the interesting part. I teach people to stay in hard conversations for a living. It's literally my job. And yet when I'm the one activated, my nervous system, it defaults to flight. My nervous system moves before my brain does. And actually, for a long time, I wondered if that made me a hypocrite, if it made me weak. I'm activated and I go into flight mode, which might mean I'm not staying in those hard conversations. But what I think now is that it doesn't make me weak. It just makes me human. It makes me normal. In this particular context, it wasn't a colleague who activated me. It wasn't a client. It was a stranger in a 60-second interaction. And over the years, I have learned to carefully pick my battle. What I've learned after 20 plus years of working with leaders and having many difficult conversations is that knowing your default stress response is the first step to actually making a choice. So there's a difference between defaulting to flight or fight or whatever it happens to be, and actually deciding that this is what is going to make the most sense in this context. So in that interaction at the gym, I didn't actually default to flight. I decided to flee. Flight actually made sense. Not every hard conversation is worth having. And I think there's a real skill, there's a real value in knowing the difference, actually being able to make that choice, being empowered to decide. Am I going to default or am I going to decide? Now, this might show up at work constantly. You might have a colleague who pushes back on everything. That's fight, right? You might have a leader who goes quiet and then sends a passive-aggressive email later. That might be freeze. You might have a manager who over-apologizes to keep the peace. That's fawn. We all have a default. Most of us have never actually been asked to name it. Now, I've talked about this a lot, but I have a tool called the ARC method. The ARC method is so useful in so many different contexts, and it stands for Ask, Respect, Connect. So it can be hard in the heat of the moment, in the heat of the conversation. But when you are deciding whether a conversation is worth having, whether you are going to continue to engage, start by asking yourself a better question. Not, am I angry? Am I going to flee? But is this worth my energy? And respect your own answer. So asking the question, like, is this worth my energy? That's the A, that's the ask. But you want to make sure that you then respect your own answer. And then connect. That's the C, connect that answer to action. And sometimes the action is staying. It's flighting, it's fleeing. Sometimes that action is leaving. And both can be the right call, right? Context absolutely matters. So here's the practice. Think about the last time you got activated at work. You got worked up. Maybe there was a loaded comment in a meeting. Maybe there was someone who dismissed your idea. Maybe there was a conversation that went completely sideways. You didn't see that coming. What did you do? Did you push back? Did you go quiet? Did you over apologize? Did you leave? Ask yourself, was that your default response? Or was that a choice you made? By the way, this can happen. This can work in your personal life too. So you might want to think about how this could have played out or how it did play out in your personal life. Ask yourself, was your response the default or did you make a choice? And you don't have to know the answer, at least right away, but start by asking, start by thinking about this stuff. What is your default stress response? And when was the last time that you chose a stress response intentionally? So that's your good vibe for the week. Now let's move into this week's good vibes to go. It's Autism Acceptance Month, so get smarter in seconds on autism, courtesy of Blair Amani and Dylan Caput. And there is a link to that video in the show notes. All right, folks, thank you for listening, and thank you for listening to Good Vibes Leadership. If this resonated, please share it with a leader in your life who needs to hear it. And if you want to bring this conversation to your own organization, I would love to talk. Find me at BernadetteSmith.com. I'm Bernadette Smith. I'm cheering you on. If you don't already get the 5 Things newsletter, you can subscribe at 5thingsdei.com. Have a great week. That's your weekly shot of Good Vibes Leadership. For the full rundown of this week's top stories and some proof of positive change, grab my 5 Things newsletter at 5thingsdei.com. Remember, lead with joy, build for everyone. Now go be the leader your people deserve.